Let's go through these stories in more detail with Jason Reed, the UK lead at Young Voices. Jason, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
Shall we start with The Guardian here, talking about the sort of expectation there is from the UK now to now supply Storm Shadow missiles for use by Ukraine. Do you think that would be the right decision?
I think it certainly would. We don't know what's going to happen now in January when Donald Trump becomes president, and I think that Russia knows that there's a lot up in the air at the moment, and they're just going to hang on as long as they can until January and see if they can squeeze a deal out of Ukraine with the help of Donald Trump. And that's a great shame because the Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom, and we've done a great job of supporting them over the past 2 years, and I think we should continue doing that until the absolute last moment and not put them in a position where they have to make any concessions. We've had all the usual threats from the Kremlin about, oh, this will trigger a palpable response and all this sort of thing if Ukraine uses missiles from places like the US inside Russia. But I think we've heard it all before. There's nothing more that they can do. They've already had to resort to deploying North Korean troops on the front line, emptying Russian prisons to replenish their front lines. And we should just be giving Ukraine all the support they could possibly need for these crucial few weeks that we've got before Donald Trump takes office.
Yeah, I mean, Putin is accusing the West of escalation, saying Biden risked adding fuel to the fire. The Times says Moscow's promised a palpable response after they authorized the use of those weapons. I mean, that, I guess, as a reaction from Putin was inevitable.
It was, yeah. This is exactly what Putin does day in, day out, and he has done since the war started all the way back in 2022. He knows that the tide is unfortunately slipping his way a little bit because of Donald Trump rising to the White House again. But we've got to give Ukraine all the support they need. In my view, I think that this talk of escalation and so on is clearly a scare tactic. I mean, we know the Kremlin playbook by now, don't we? We know that there's not going to be a risk of nuclear war or anything like that. They just want the Western support for Ukraine to back off so that they can have an easier time seizing some territory. I don't think we should let them do that.
Yeah, the Prime Minister's made it very clear. He said, I actually said that. I've been really clear for a long time now. We need to double down. We need to make sure Ukraine has what is necessary for as long as necessary because we cannot allow Putin to win this war. He didn't give sort of operational details or, price tags on any of that yesterday, but I'm sure more will be asked of that today as the summit continues. You mentioned the sort of post-Trump ×2 era, Jason. Looking at the front page of the Telegraph, Britain would side with the European Union over the US if Donald Trump prompted a trade war with China. That's effectively what the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, said yesterday. Will we be choosing the right side if we do that?
I think it's absolutely bonkers that we would, regardless of what Donald Trump does, that we would try to side with the European economy over the American economy, given the way that economic growth is going. The US has been the growth engine of the world for the past few decades, and it seems clear to me that it will be for the next few decades as well. We are in an amazing position, having been outside the EU. If Donald Trump does go ahead with his trade war, we know that he has a bit of a soft spot for Britain. If I were in the government right now, I would be advising everybody to make contact with people in Trump's camp and try to worm our way in to, through the back door to try to get a special deal for Britain, get us some exemptions from any tariffs he's going to put in place to give British businesses a leg up with exporting things to the US. I think that would be a sensible thing to do. That doesn't mean we stop trading with Europe, of course. There's no possibility of a trade war with Europe. They're going to be on our side anyway. So I think we should have the best of both worlds. I think it's a bit bonkers that we are hearing rhetoric from the government that we're already admitting defeat and admitting that we're going to have...
Is it admitting defeat? I mean, we know that it was just last week, I think it was the governor of the Bank of England who said, actually, what you need to do is rebuild relations with the EU. That's critical.
Well, rebuilding relations with the EU is difficult when the EU is so intransigent in trade negotiations, and they've got their things that they want, like concessions on free movement, which the government doesn't want to give them. But the fact is that we can have that closer relationship with the EU while we have a closer relationship with the US on trading, and while we are also forging other relationships around the world. This is not a zero-sum game. We can have all of these things. And so I find it worrying that the UK government is already shunning the new US government in terms of trade. It's we need to be trading with the US. We are missing out on a huge opportunity by not seeking to get around any kind of trade barriers with the US as soon as we can.
Let's look at Trump's relationships. This is the last US story, I promise. Inside the World section of the Times today, Musk, I'm quoting here, is outstaying his welcome in the court of Trump. We've got two probably of the, well, I expect the most powerful men in America now, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They obviously sort of were hand in hand almost through the election campaign. It seems recently, whenever you see a photograph of Donald Trump, or whether he's at sort of a wrestling match or wherever, Elon Musk is right in his shadow. But maybe things are not quite as harmonious as they would like, or particularly Elon Musk would like us to expect.
Well, I'll tell you what, Rosie, these next 4 years are going to be absolutely box office with Trump in the White House. He is appointing these people like Elon Musk to senior positions in his administration, and they are just fire starters. They are people who do not want to back down. Elon Musk, perhaps the most surprising of those top faces that has been associated with his campaign. Reportedly, Elon Musk has been acting as a sort of co-president almost, and has been taking part in Trump's calls with foreign leaders around the world, and is already, it seems, upsetting other Trump advisors. It seems like only a matter of time before we have some big, dramatic, splashy fallouts between top faces and top voices at the Trump administration, just as we had the first time round. It's all happening all over again.
You said what was happening? There was a dinner guests that were talking about Trump's justice nominees could hear a loud argument, voices raised between Elon Musk and one of Trump's legal advisors. I mean, do you think that's not a very diplomatic start?
It's not, no, and it's extraordinary that Elon Musk has been given so much power overnight. He's got no political experience. He actually campaigned for Ron DeSantis early on in the presidential election cycle. That was a long time ago now, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens next in this sort of soap opera that we've got forming with the tech tycoon who's been brought in. There are probably people within the Trump camp who have been loyally serving him for years and years now, and who've stuck with him through the defeat in 2020 and all of that sort of thing, and now feel a bit put out of joint by the fact that Elon Musk has been brought in and getting all this power and all this trust and all this love pretty much overnight. And so they're going to start to push back a bit, and that's going to result in some unpleasant headlines for Trump.
Elon Musk, I think it seems like, is petitioning to have a nominee for Treasury Secretary that would be most beneficial to him, and that might be where some of the tension lies. Let's look at some politics at home, much further forward in the paper. Banning cabinet ministers. This is such a difficult topic that's going to be debated at the end of this month. The headline here is telling MPs to stay neutral on assisted dying is unconstitutional. Robert Buckland's accused Simon Case, the cabinet secretary, of breaking Whitehall rules by saying ministers should have sort of imposed neutrality here. Is this too much of a sensitive topic that actually we need to hear what people think, Jason?
Well, the government's got itself into a right pickle on this topic. Assisted dying, of course, is one of those topics, one of those sensitive conscience-based areas where MPs are allowed a free vote. They can vote without the party whip. And the problem is that seems this time around to have been taken to extremes, where even people within the government expressing opinions, taking a position publicly on this issue has riled some feathers and has invited Simon Case to tell them not to do that. Well, I think this is the problem fundamentally, is the issue is too sensitive and too polarizing to be handled through a backbench bill like this. The government should have a position, in my view, on this bill. You can't really have this sort of free-for-all because it's too chaotic, it's too all over the place, and you get this really worrying situation where we've got our elected politicians are being told not to say what they think, which seems a bit bonkers to me.
Yeah, I mean, well, on Times Radio, we've been asking ministers what they think. Bridget Phillipson, the education, yesterday said she'd vote against the bill, saying her views hadn't changed. We will keep asking those questions here on the programme. Some slightly lighter stories, Jason, for us to look at. Rishi Sunak, of course, the former Prime Minister, his father-in-law, has done an interview where he said days off are a waste. I wonder how you're feeling about on Tuesday when we've got a lot of the working week ahead of us. Saying that when he was working before, he remembered when it went from a 6-day week to a 5-day week, and said that was in 1986. Said, frankly, he was a little bit disappointed. Presumably you wouldn't be.
I wouldn't personally. No, I think this is an interesting statement, actually, about different, I suppose, different approaches to the working week. Look, I think if people want to work a 6-day working week and earn a bit more money off the back of that, I think they should absolutely be free to do so. And so if there are company bosses who want to impose that policy and then people want to go for those jobs and rake in the extra money that comes with that, then all power to them. I'm a big believer in the freedom of choosing to work how you want to and when you want to, as far as that is possible. But of course, there will be a lot of people who will say that we should have stronger workers' rights, and that we should have people able to work a guaranteed number of hours in the week and not feel that they have to work more than that. But it's an interesting issue that I think that as long as we don't delve into regulation too much, we don't have the government deciding how many hours a week we work, that people should be free to do more or less whatever they want within reason, though. I noticed within this story the incredible anecdote that Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, has not taken a holiday since he came to power, which was back in 2014.
I know. He does 100
hours. 6
hours.
prime ministers ago.
100 hours a week. And, well, what Rishi Sunak's father-in-law was talking about, and this is obviously kind of working practices in India, he was saying, look, traditional Indian middle-class values of hard work, punctuality, and an unostentatious lifestyle is the way forward. I think, we were talking yesterday about the number of us, and actually in about 15 minutes' time, we're going to be looking at kind of the pitch to start your own business. That is often, I think lots of us feel a bit fearful of doing that, or maybe if it's a side hustle or whatever. But maybe our economy would be boosted a bit more if we had some of those lifestyle factors: hard work, punctuality, saying we wanted to work more rather than pitching for a 4-day week.
Absolutely. Well, the Indian economy has seen extraordinary growth over the past few years, while our productivity here in Britain has slumped and we've struggled a lot with growth. But perhaps there is something in it. Perhaps if we allowed or encouraged more people to work the days or the hours that they can, that we would all reap the benefits of that.
And I must be very clear, I'm not suggesting we should do a 6-day working week. I think 5 is sufficient. 5 is sufficient. Final thing, Jason, what's your favourite drink?
Well, I must say I am partial to a gin and tonic. I know it's more of a summery drink, isn't it? But there's never a bad time for gin, in my view. But I noticed that it seems that lots of other Brits feel the same way, even at the expense of the nation's formerly favourite drink, a cup of tea.
A tea has been taken over by a G&T, and this is what surprised me. The UK is the world's biggest market for gin. So we love it and we drink a lot of it. And Jason, sounds like you'll have a couple now and then as well. Jason, thank you so much. The UK lead at Young Voices, going through the papers with me this morning.